All right, so he says, wherefore laying aside. Well, laying aside has to do with that we once labored with the tools of the world, right? Right, which we found useful for defending our principle and for pursuing our aspirations. Right? We lay these aside by picking up the tools of righteousness and building with the sanctified tools of the priesthood. Okay, this is holiness, which we saw there in chapter 1, verses 15 and 16, right? Okay, so because God only is holy, so must we be joined to him through Christ, who sanctifies us to be holy as he is holy. Right? Therefore, we cannot lay aside the works of iniquity without giving ourselves over to the works of the new covenant. Right? We cannot do that. You cannot lay aside the works of iniquity without giving yourselves over to the works of the new covenant. Right? This is something a lot of people don't understand, because they will see, they will come, they'll reach a point, and I reached this point prior to coming into covenant, where they'll make changes in their life. Okay, they'll make significant changes in their behavior or in their routines. Okay, they'll begin reading the Bible. They'll begin praying to God. They'll begin, things that were very foreign to them before. Okay, and now they've made significant changes, which which others around them take notice of. That this is very different for you, right? And it's a very profound change in their life, and they want to say that, okay, well, I've put aside the works of the world and now I'm doing the work of God. Okay, well, are you? Okay, just because you've changed, from this set of tools to that set of tools doesn't mean you're working with sanctified tools, does it? Okay, you're trying to set, uh, in doing that, all right, and just speaking from my own experience, okay, I was trying to assign value. Okay, that set of tools which I was working with, okay, was bad. This set of tools is good, right? So I'm trying to attach my own value to these things. Yet I was still working with the tools of the world. Okay, it was just a different set of tools. Okay, there are thousands and thousands of sets of tools out there to choose from, millions. Okay, they're all tools of the world. From the perspective of God, they're all reprobate. Death enters into them all. Okay, death enters into them, and they are not sanctified by him. Okay, he authorizes those things for the testing of our hearts and the testing of our choices, right? Do you love me more than these, right? But he only sanctifies those things which have been sprinkled with the blood of Christ. So just because you've selected tools which you feel have a greater value of godliness, right? The question is, do they bring forth the fruit of faith in the heart? Right? Did they bring your faith into covenant? Did they restore truth to the heart? Right? Did they make known to you the priesthood of Jesus Christ? Right? Are you able to overcome yourself, the world, and the devil with those things? Is your faith now bringing forth the fruit of righteousness, which is pleasing in the sight of God? Is God now accepting this activity of faith? Okay, do you stand justified before God? Are you sanctified by Christ? Right? Are you exercising your faith in holiness? Are you able to use these things to separate yourself from the world unto God? Okay, no, none of those, none of those, none of those things describe the experience that I had prior to coming into covenant. Okay, and yet I thought that I was doing something that was of great spiritual significance. Well, it wasn't, you know, and that's something that um, we all had to come to terms with as we come into covenant, because truth challenges the principle and the aspiration, doesn't it? Okay, and this is something we all had to lay down these things. So this is what he's talking about. Wherefore laying aside. Okay, because we were once active with those tools. Okay, we were once building with those things. We once saw value in those things, right? But now, because of the grace and truth of God, okay, as we've come into contact with His stewardship, right, that God has made these things known to us through His spiritual government, hasn't He? Okay, all right, and this doctrine, which is the apostles' doctrine, which we have received, that same doctrine which Chief Apostle Peter, okay, set within the hearts of these believers, okay, is the same doctrine that we've received, okay, that this is profitable for faith. Right? This does result, okay, in our faith, our choices of faith being sanctified by God. Okay, because we're not making our own choices as to the tools. We're not assigning our own value to things. Okay? We are finding agreement with God. We are saying, all right, Lord, this is what you've sanctified for my faith, then this is what I will use for my faith. I'm not selecting this thing because I have esteemed it as being profitable for godliness, because God has. All right. So I'm finding value in it because God has made known that there's value in it to me, and therefore I'm in agreement with God in using these things. So therefore we lay these things aside. Now I said you can't lay down the tools of the works of iniquity without giving yourself over to the works of the new covenant, because there's a power that's necessary. Okay? There is a power necessary. You can choose from the various tool sets of the world. All right. You can go from being the way the world looks at things as being a good person to a bad person. Okay, the way they estimate things. Okay, and you can go from uh, all the different varieties of those, every different version of that there is, and there's huge versions. I remember sharing at a prison one time. Within the prison system, which a lot of people would say that people that are not in prison are decent people, and people that are in prison aren't decent people. Well, within the prison system, they rank themselves too. Okay, there's good ones and there's bad ones within that system. Okay, but from the outside of the prison, you would say no, none of them are good, right? That type of thing. Well, this is how it works with God. Okay, within the world of darkness, okay, which is this dimension that we live in. Okay, we might say, well, this is better than that, and this, and try to make distinction between all of these things. But from God's perspective, which is not in darkness, but obviously He is the light. Okay, from His perspective, the whole is evil. Okay, none of it's any good. The only thing that's of any value to our faith is Christ. Okay, so and in order for you to remove your faith from the things of darkness and join your faith to the things of Christ, or in other words, laying down the works of iniquity, in order for you to do that, there must be a power present. Okay, because you cannot make that choice on your own. There has to be a power to remove your faith from darkness and join it to light. Okay, these are different kingdoms. Okay, there's a power that's necessary for this transition. That power is the power of the Spirit. You have to work with the power of the Holy Spirit. All right. And therefore you have to work with that which the Holy Spirit works with. Okay, you can't come into contact with the Holy Spirit apart from the sanctified contact points. Okay, it's just like in order to make your vacuum cleaner run, you have to plug it into an outlet, right? You can't just stick your vacuum cleaner cord, into your garbage disposal and hope it's going to work. It's not, or stick it into a pipe where the water comes from. Okay, it has to be an electrical outlet, right? That's a contact point for your source of electricity, right? In order for that vacuum to function. Okay, it's the same thing with faith. Right? If you're going to lay down the tools of iniquity, you have to first uh, pick up and labor with the tools of righteousness, right? Because in these things is our contact point to the grace of God, and in these things we come into contact with the power of His virtue. Okay, and that power is what's necessary for our sanctification and our holiness. Okay, so this knowledge is necessary for us, to die to ourselves daily. So we can talk about dying to ourselves, but without this knowledge, we can't do it. Right? Which is why talking about it prior to coming to the covenant was a very frustrating thing, wasn't it? Because we could talk about it, but we didn't really understand it. Okay, and we had our doubts and our reservations about, well, am I really dying daily? I don't know what that means. And from one year to the next, it meant different things to us, didn't it? I know it did for me. And I began to see that this shifting, okay, of my understanding of things, I began to doubt my own understanding, because it was like, well, every year I disagree with what I thought last year, and I agree with something new now this year, and I started to think, well, who am I to teach anybody anything? I don't know anything myself, and that was prior to coming into covenant. All right, now the reason why that shifting was taking place was because uh, I was discovering that the things that I were embracing, weren't of the value that I thought they were. Okay, the philosophies that I was embracing, the the perspective that I was working with. Okay, the direction that I was taking. Okay, didn't pan out. Right, so I would choose a different, set of tools, a different set of knowledge, a different flavor, right, and pursue that and see how that went. So there was always that shifting, right? But all of that changed when I came into covenant with God. Right, I received one truth, okay, one foundation of knowledge, right, which provided one direction. And as I embraced that knowledge, embraced these tools of the priesthood, okay, and followed after this direction, God bore witness to Christ, right, and He's continued to do so for it's been what 9 years now, right? So that and none of that has changed. Okay, all of that shifting, okay, it was trying to build in shifting sand. All of that ended when I came into covenant with God, right? And the same thing took place with Chief Apostle Eric, right? Who many years prior to that, who had received this, who the Lord set aside and prepared his heart with the same knowledge. Okay, had to also, okay, this truth also set a challenge to his principles and aspirations. Okay, he also had to work with this knowledge and allow it to, conform to this knowledge, okay, and allow it to shape his faith and to shape his understanding. Okay, the same thing that we go through is the same thing that he had to go through. Okay, and again, for even many years prior to me coming into covenant, okay, his faith has not changed. Okay, that same foundation knowledge that he received is the same foundation, the same knowledge that he functions with today in his priesthood. Okay, it's an unchanging priesthood. It's an unchanging knowledge. Okay, that's and that is Christ working within us. Okay, that's one knowledge, one faith. Okay, that is the same thing that Apostle Peter was working with. That same foundation knowledge. Okay, over 2,000 years ago. So you can see uh, that this is not building upon shifting sand. This is the firm foundation. Okay, this is the rock of our faith. All right, so he says, wherefore laying aside, right? So there's a change of direction, isn't there? Right, there's a change of direction that this knowledge requires. And we're now exercising our choices with new knowledge, and we're exercising our faith with new tools. Okay, and it's in that choice of faith to work with this new knowledge and these new tools that you are laying aside the old knowledge and the tools of the world. Okay, this is sanctification and holiness. Okay, you are using the things that the Lord uses to sanctify your faith, okay, in order to separate yourself from the world unto God. There's a separation from the world and there's a joining. Both things take place at the same time. Okay, there's a separation and a joining, right? As you are joining your faith to God through Christ, okay, through the things of the Spirit, you are uh, also separating yourself from the things of the world. Okay, you can't do one without the other. So what do? We join ourselves to Christ. Okay, we join ourselves to Christ. This is how we die daily. This is how Christ lives. Very simple. Okay, this is the knowledge of the priesthood, and the whole priesthood functions revolves around joining your faith to Christ, doesn't it? Okay, every single day, okay, and all throughout the day, you're exercising choices of faith which join your faith to Christ. Okay, every one of those choices of faith which joins your faith to Christ also separates yourself from the world. Okay, because you can't labor with the philosophies of the world while your faith is being exercised with the knowledge of Christ. Okay, they don't mix. So, right, so you have no part in those things of the world. Right? You're not using the tools of the world. You're not using the knowledge and the philosophies of the world. Okay, your hope and your expectation isn't in those things. You're not embracing and following after those little bunny trails any longer because you're now actively exercising your faith in agreement with God. Right? And the Holy Spirit is working a work of regeneration within your soul as you're making these choices because you're now overcoming. Okay, you're overcoming with the assisted ability of the Spirit, and that's what Apostle Peter here is talking about. Okay, so we're laying these things aside. Now